Welcome, everyone, to Scheller Lunchtime Live, a live stream series hosted by the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. My name is Lindsay Kane, and I'm the Associate Director of Client Relationships for non-degree executive education programs. On select Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you'll have the chance to hear from Scheller faculty, student, and alumni speakers as they discuss relevant topics for the tech-driven digital age. At Scheller, we're proud to offer undergraduate, MBA, and Ph.D. programs, along with open enrollment and custom executive education programs. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Marius Florin Niculescu, Associate Professor in Information Technology Management at Scheller. Florin joined Scheller after completing his Ph.D. in Operations, Information, and Technology at Stanford Graduate School of Business. His research focuses on the economics of information systems, IT security, software freemium and seeding business models, network economics, management and diffusion of IT products and services, and open platform innovation, among other technology-based subjects. Florin's research has been published in Management Science, Information Systems Research, and Management Information Systems Quarterly, and he has presented at numerous conferences and research seminars at peer universities. He's received numerous teaching awards in both the full-time and evening MBA programs, and was voted one of Poets and Quant's 2019 Best 40 Under 40 Professors at Scheller. Florin serves as the academic director for several executive education programs and is a council member on the Information Security and Privacy Interdisciplinary Research Institute at Georgia Tech. Today, Florin will discuss approaches to innovation crowdsourcing and the role digital platforms play in the crowdsourcing process. As always, feel free to ask questions in the comments section. Florin will address as many questions as possible at the end of his presentation. Over to you, Florin.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everyone, and thank you for attending this very short presentation during lunchtime. I'll focus today's talk on the crowdsourcing of innovation and in particular on the ideation part. So before we get into the topic, let's demystify a little bit the term crowdsourcing. It has been used in many forms and shapes out there, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. So let's add a definition to the term. By and large, there are a couple of definitions that have been in circulation over the years. At some point, there were no less than 40 different versions of crowdsourcing circulating. But over the years, more or less, folks started gravitating around two of these definitions. One envisions crowdsourcing as a more encompassing phenomenon. And here is such a definition. Crowdsourcing is the practice of sourcing. Nowadays, this is happening mostly via the internet of needed services, tasks, ideas, or resources from large undefined crowds instead of the traditional designated agents. So you want transportation, you will go to Uber or Lyft. You won't necessarily hail a cab. You want accommodation, you go to Airbnb. You don't go necessarily to a hotel chain. A narrower definition of crowdsourcing places it as the practice of sourcing in the form of an open call. So that's where the distinction lies between the first, more encompassing, broader definition and this narrower definition. So sourcing in the form of an open call, contributions from large undefined crowds towards solving or completing a well-defined problem, task, or job. Just to give you an illustration, Airbnb fits the profile of the first definition. You're sourcing from large undefined crowds, accommodation. But Airbnb does not fit the crowdsourcing definition in the narrower sense, because when you go to Airbnb, you don't place an open call for a need. You don't say, I need 2 nights in Paris, and then all of a sudden, people in Paris start bidding to offer you accommodation at various prices. You're just browsing through a predetermined catalog of available accommodations that were listed by various homeowners or property owners. So kind of depending on which definition you're using, more things will fall under crowdsourcing or fewer things will fall under crowdsourcing. There are many types of crowdsourcing out there. So we can talk about the crowdsourcing of ideas, the crowdsourcing of evaluation, the crowdsourcing of labor, funding, and also access to peer-provided assets and services. And here we have an overlap with the sharing economy, again, if you consider the broader definition of crowdsourcing. Today, I want to focus on the crowdsourcing of innovation, and in particular, that component of innovation at the very beginning, the ideation. How do you get the ideas in an effective way from crowds? Crowdsourcing of innovation can also involve the execution. We have many examples if we think about open source products, open source software, where the community contributes ideas, but also contributes towards the execution, right? So the delivery of and the production of the software. So I'm not going to focus so much on execution. I'm going to focus more on sourcing the ideas from the community. Before we get into a couple of methods that we are seeing deployed in the industry, how is IT changing the game? We had crowdsourcing. Hey, I have a need, who wants to contribute? Probably for millennia. So that's not necessarily a new concept. What IT does, it enables more efficient crowdsourcing at a much larger scale and scope. So now with the internet, really geographical boundaries are not that important anymore, for example, and we can have immediate, almost instantaneous communication. We have a lot of reduction in human error. So basically, we are moving towards frictionless exchange of information and value. Two things emerge from this. So first of all, we have the emergence of IT-enabled crowdsourcing platforms. These are a form of matchmakers between entities that have a need for a resource, for a solution to a problem, and entities who can assist with that. On the other hand, also with IT, we have seen lowered barriers for corporations, institutions, governments to create their own crowdsourcing portals. So that you can have initiatives that are internal to the company, or companies can go to these third-party platforms. So when you're sourcing ideas from the community, an important thing is to make sure you address properly those ideas. So companies have been thinking, should I go to the community for innovation? Or maybe should I just do a very focused study of the market? Let me interview 500 kind of selected consumers that form a representative sample of my consumer population, pick 5 things that they say as suggestions, and maybe just focus on those and call it a day. We know how to do this. Everything is fine, all hunky-dory. Aren't you missing on something? If you're a large company with a large installed base of consumers, are you sure you're covering all their needs and wants? How about going to all the consumers instead? Maybe there are a lot of niche needs that you're not envisioning. And also consumers, if you put every consumer might individually have certain skills. If you put those things together and all the feedback from the consumers, maybe you're going to achieve something much greater than you can achieve through a small scale interview campaign where you're trying to get to your customer base just through small representative samples. But companies in the past have shied away from this. So in general, companies saw this as a bad idea. What? Opening the floodgates, asking everybody for ideas. And the reason, you could see the company's position also. Suppose you have a lot of customers, some are okay with your product, some are disgruntled, and you offer them a way to give you feedback and to suggest improvements. Well, now, if you do not have enough resources to address those pieces of feedback, those suggestions, you're in a bad spot. You try to put this face in front of the customers, you're customer-centric, you want to listen to your customers, but at the same time, you're unable to execute on all the feedback. So the customers will perceive it as, oh, wait a minute, the company is trying to turn around, trying to do something good. They ask for my feedback. I'm happy, I'm going to provide it. And then it feels like your feedback went into a black hole. You don't get any response because the company has limited resources. So it's going to cherry pick about maybe 1%, 2%, 5% of the suggestions. And from the consumer perspective, it will look like for a lot of consumers that their feedback is ignored. So that naturally is going to antagonize many consumers. So companies in the past try to avoid this problem and say, let's not even open this can of worms. Let's stay away from this. But there is a way to do it. And in the last decade or so, companies started really thinking, how can they do crowdsourcing of ideas at large scale and also keep the customers happy, including the customers whose suggestions will not be addressed? Because that's the tricky question. That's the tricky part. So the way they did it was to say, wait a minute, let's take a step back. It's very easy to crowdsource ideas. You build a portal nowadays, so cheap to put together a website with certain forms and accept submissions. That's not a problem. Everybody can do it. But the next part is, how do you execute on that feedback? So first we have the ideation component. There are open calls for new ideas, and we can start accepting submissions. But this is where we are starting to see progress, is in the way we process those submissions. Companies decided to put back into the court of the community also the evaluation process. So in other words, whereas a lot of companies shied away from crowdsourcing of ideas in isolation, there's a better way to do it by marrying crowdsourcing of ideas and crowdsourcing of evaluation. In other words, why don't we let the community also vote on the ideas submitted by the community so that we understand which ideas and which suggestions have priority for the community? Once the community votes, and it can be ratings, thumb up, thumb down, comments, and so on, we are going to see an emerging set of ideas, of core ideas and suggestions and desired features that seem to be important to a large part of the community. And then the company can decide to prioritize efforts on those ideas. But now if I'm a customer and my idea is not selected, one thing is for me to feel that my idea went into a black hole, into the void, and it was completely ignored by the company. The other thing is for me to be faced with the following outcome. On my idea, only 4 people out of 1 million potential customers voted. And then I'm seeing ideas with hundreds or thousands of votes. Then I'll accept it. Perhaps I'm not 100% happy that my individual super niche need was not addressed, but I can see and understand and accept that the community is seeing other features as priority. So I'm not unhappy about it. And then the company will assess those suggestions that are prioritized by the community, and then they will dedicate development, engineering effort towards those first. So let's see the outcome. Is this really working? We understand this idea of innovation, where you can see it like a funnel. There is a lot of initial feedback. Eventually, things take shape, and a few things come at the other end. All right, so let's look at 3 initiatives. My Starbucks idea, which was the innovation crowdsourcing platform for Starbucks, Dell Idea Storm, and Salesforce IdeaExchange. So let's see how these performed over the years. Before we get to that, I wanted to show you, this is an older screenshot. The interface changed in minute ways, but just kind of a little bit, so you might not recognize the same messages. But here is a suggestion on Salesforce IdeaExchange for a template change. So a person in the community offered that. Then we see the ideation part clearly. We have the ability to submit ideas. But then on the right-hand side, we also see the evaluation component. And again, ideation married with evaluation, both in the crowdsourcing shape. And here you can have thumb up, thumb down. So you can vote up or vote down. Every vote for Salesforce IdeaExchange is 10 points. And then there is an additional message, which says under point threshold. This idea did not garner enough support from the community so that Salesforce dedicates internal resources towards implementing this. So again, letting the community surface what's priority. So let's look at Starbucks, my Starbucks idea between 2008 and 2017. In 2017, Starbucks discontinued the community part of the platform in the sense that you couldn't vote on the ideas submitted, and in 2018 they retired the platform. Dell, between 2007 and 2018, Dell, if you recall, was taken private by Michael Dell in 2013, and the revamped Dell became again public around 2018. And when Dell became public again, then this initiative was discontinued at that point. And then we have Salesforce IdeaExchange between 2006 and this year. Salesforce IdeaExchange is alive and kicking very well. So it's considered an extremely valuable asset for Salesforce. So let's look at the ideation part. And here with Starbucks, we have over 190,000 ideas submitted through this platform. A ton of ideas for recipes, for brews, for drinks, what other products to carry in the store, store layout, music, you name it. Then we have for Dell over 28,000 ideas submitted. And for Salesforce IdeaExchange, over 82,000 ideas submitted. So there is a lot of participation from the community. The community is enthusiastic about providing suggestions and ideas if the community is being asked to do so. If we look at evaluation now, do the folks in the community also participate, or they are more not engaging with the content? So it's just some people submit, but nobody really cares about reading the submissions of others. That's not the case. So with Starbucks, we have over 2 million votes in that time window, which means over 10 votes on average per idea submitted. So definitely significant participation from the community in terms of evaluating the suggestions. For Dell Idea Storm, over 748,000 votes, and also we have comments, over 100,000 comments. So roughly almost 30 votes per idea, even more engagement. And then in addition to that, we see behaviors. The platform was organized in such a way that it replicates a little bit the engagements from blogs, where consumers could also offer feedback, not only just a vote. So yes, great suggestion, but have you thought about enhancing it even further? So you can have a little bit of a dialogue there. And we see both ways of engaging with the platform are present here, both votes for the evaluation and also comments. And for Salesforce, we have over 2.45 million votes. So again, in the range of roughly almost 30 votes per idea. So again, a lot of engagement from the community, and Salesforce also allows for comments. I don't have the data on the comments, the latest data. But now, again, we have a platform where the community submits ideas and the community votes those ideas. Did these companies take anything away from these platforms? Were they able in the end to take some ideas and truly implement them? So again, consider the process of innovation having that funnel shape. A lot enters, eventually certain things are filtered out, and you will have eventually in the end a few features, products, services being developed and delivered. So if we look at the implementation part, Starbucks implemented over 300 of these suggestions. Dell implemented over 500 of these suggestions, and Salesforce to date delivered actually more than 3,000, more than 3,400 of these suggestions. So definitely firms do extract value from the crowdsourcing of ideas, and they deliver back to the community features that they want, and more so the important features for the community. So, and the important part again was to marry the crowdsourcing of ideas and the crowdsourcing of evaluation, rather than just sourcing ideas, but then relying solely on internal resources for the evaluation part. You can also go to third-party platforms. So the examples that I gave you were internal efforts. Each of those companies that we just discussed develop their own internal platforms, but you could go to platforms that can host contests, open calls for innovations and solutions that are posted on these platforms. You can structure the way you accept submissions. You can put there the rewards if you want to have an award. You can specify the contractual terms around intellectual property. If you make the submission, do you retain any rights? Or in exchange for the award, you give up the exclusive rights or whatnot. Various forms, again, present. You can, the participants who make submissions can give to the seeker of the solution exclusive rights or non-exclusive rights to that solution. Then the seeker will evaluate the submissions, usually, and will decide whether to implement it or not. And the seeker will offer the award to whoever wins that contest. And there are several platforms out there. Innocentive, which is broader scope, but then you can have platforms such as Gera Creativa, which is more focused around crowdsourcing ideas for design. So far, we talked about looking outwards, going to the community, to your potential customers, and seeking ideas and feedback from them. But there is another pool of talent that you can turn to for the crowdsourcing of innovation, and that's the pool of employees, your talent in-house. So how would you go about that? And I want to show you an example and some analysis that came from recent research in 2021, so just last year, hot off the press. There was also an article in Harvard Business Review at the beginning of this year. So let's talk a little bit about Renault. Renault has an in-house innovation crowdsourcing platform that they use at Technocentre. That's their R&D center. And yes, they have the ideation part. So again, we're talking about in-house. So employees of Renault can submit ideas. Then we have the evaluation part. Yes, likes. We can have likes on the ideas. But now different dynamics are at play within an organization, because the people that like ideas or dislike them happen to be your colleagues, people that you're likely to know. So in order to save face, a lot of people might not disclose how they really feel about it. So now the evaluations take a different connotation. They might be cheap talk, those evaluations, those likes. They might not matter more. Also, if you have hierarchy, your boss posts an idea and then meets you down the hallway. Hey, what did you think about my idea? Did you like it? What are you going to do? Yes, I like it. Let me go run back to my computer and I'm going to click like. Then you have kind of the need here to show evidence of interest in the innovation from the employees. So you have to find a different way to surface enthusiasm, to identify it. And what Renault did, they added, and the reason why I'm talking about the role of digital platforms, I talked about, so let's take a small parenthesis here. I talked about putting together a platform for crowdsourcing from the exterior, from the community of consumers. And there it's important to have the features in there for ideas and evaluation in the platform. But Renault added an additional feature to their platform. In other words, it gave the employees the option not only to like a project submitted by their colleagues, but the option to also commit to volunteer to help their colleague implement that. So in addition to evaluation, would you like to volunteer your time? Yes, I'm on board with it. I'll put half a day per week for the next 6 months to do this, and Renault will make that happen. Does this work? It so happens, so the researchers found that the volunteering effort, the commitment to volunteer, indicates a lot more interest, real interest, than likes, which tend to be vaporware. Also, something more interesting came to light. There are some ideas that are low-hanging fruits. Tweak a small thing here, it's a sure success. The volunteers tend to gravitate more towards ideas that are challenging, not ideas that are sure success. They like the challenge. So they want technically ambitious ideas rather than low risk ones. So Renault can extract a lot of value from this interaction between the employees and this collaboration. Also, there is another benefit to this. Some of the ideas will be approved by Renault and funding will be given to those ideas, plus folks that volunteered will be allowed to work with their division managers so that they get time so that they can work on this crowdsourced idea from their colleagues. So that means that an approved product or solution hits the ground running with a team that has certain skill sets already in place. So it's not only that you had an idea, but all of a sudden through the platform, you formed your team that you can start working on the idea, or at least part of the team. Then there is another interesting outcome of this. Is this really working? Or if I like your idea and I'm saying, okay, you're my colleague in the cubicle from across the aisle. I know you, we have beers on Friday night, we are very good friends, our children play together at the park. Okay, sure, you have an idea, I'll commit, I'll help you 3 hours per week. Then your friend says, sure, I'll help you also 3 hours per week for your idea. So is it a form of I scratch your back, you scratch mine? Whatever I commit, I get in return? It turns out it's not one-to-one ratio. So what the researchers uncovered, and by researchers, I mean, I put the source at the bottom of the presentation here. So we have Dijkman, Gillier, and Tonelato, who had this paper published last year in Research Policy that discussed this. So volunteering for others, it turns out that it attracts more volunteers for own projects. So for every commitment made, the rate of commitments received to your own project rose by 1.29, which is significant. So let's say 1.2 would mean for every 5 commitments you made, you attracted 6. So some people, so this is not I scratch your back, you scratch mine, simple reciprocity one-to-one. Some people get inspired by you being willing to volunteer your time. So they want to also volunteer time towards your project. So here we are talking about building a community and supporting the community, the engagement in the community. Whereas when we talked about companies going to third-party platforms and organizing contests where a lot of teams participate, but there will be a single winner. Here, Renault took a different route and de-emphasized the competition aspect of it. So in order to let the innovation emerge in a more organic way, Renault took the approach of building a community, not a competition. And it turns out that so far it's working very well. So kind of one takeaway from all these examples is the following. You can have many forms of crowdsourcing. And again, I did not discuss execution. And the volunteering part that Renault implemented, that's not crowdsourcing. Because at the end of the day, once a product is approved, it's with Renault resources and everything, and you identify the team. So I stopped short of calling that crowdsourcing, but the initial participation and willingness to contribute was crowdsourcing, so in the early stages. But again, in this presentation, I focused exclusively on the idea part, not the execution part of innovation. And the takeaway is that when we are crowdsourcing ideas and innovation, whether we look internally or externally, firms should consider, and it's not a guaranteed recipe for success, but it's something that worked for a number of companies. So firms should consider using in tandem with crowdsourcing ideas, so with the ideation process, use in tandem with that additional forms of crowdsourcing, just to make the process, the outcome of the initiative, more effective. And I'll stop here and I can take a couple of questions. And I see a question from Joe that do companies that have idea exchanges have more favorable reputations among customers versus companies that do not offer this. So definitely having a platform that allows for the crowdsourcing of ideas and feedback makes the company look consumer centric. That goes without saying. So that so absolutely customers would like to have their voices heard and their needs addressed if their needs are not addressed by the core product. So that would go without saying that an approach of talking to the hand and whatever the company delivers, you have no way of influencing versus having a way of participating will go a long way if you can participate. And Joe had another question. So can crowdsourcing be leveraged in the medical community? So crowdsourcing has been leveraged in the medical community, in particular. So definitely within Ocentive, we have seen different contests. So for example, for markers for identifying certain diseases. And the awards are given at various stages. First, there will be a proof of concept. Then at a later stage, so it will be that funnel idea, initially many submissions, but then at later stages, for a larger award, you have to show proof of concept. And then the largest award comes in the later stage where you can show data that it really works. So this has been used in the medical community as well. Also, a different form of crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, has been used in the medical community as well to just get resources so that certain people that cannot afford services could be supported by the community to afford that.
Hi, Florin. I'm so sorry. I am having technical issues, so I apologize about that. But thank you so much for such an amazing session. Do want to let our viewers know our next Scheller Lunchtime Live session is Friday, April 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern, featuring Dr. Robbie Moon, the Thomas Williams Wells Fargo Professor in Management. Robbie will discuss some of the basic strategies of natural language processing, including both traditional approaches and more recent advances in machine learning. You can register for this event and learn more about future Scheller Lunchtime Live sessions by following the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business on LinkedIn. A recording of this session and future sessions will be available on our LinkedIn and YouTube pages as well. Thank you all for joining.